I'll do the 30-second banner. Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another live stream event. Tonight I have Anthony Giretti back, and he'll be talking to us all about building minimal APIs with ASP.NET Core 8. Anthony, take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm glad to be there. Hello Calonne. I'm ready to start.
All right, Anthony, I hear you, but it looks like I'm frozen. So if you want, just start talking.
Okay, so my screen looks like not shared yet. Oh, that's me. Okay. Everything is correctly set up, so let's go. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony Giretti. I'm senior software developer and architect at Marchex. I'm Microsoft MVP, and I'm the author of 2 books, Beginning gRPC with ASP.NET Core 6 and Coding Clean, Reliable, and Safe REST APIs with ASP.NET Core 8. So today, topic of the day is building minimal API with ASP.NET Core 8, part 1, because there will be a part 2. Why a part 1? Because today I will introduce you minimal APIs feature, but the basic feature, because it's a very huge topic. So in a part 2, we will see more advanced feature. But the goal of today is introduce them, and I wish you will be able to make an opinion if you want to switch from Web API to minimal API based on their basic feature. You might have already an opinion at the end of the session. Probably there is no need to wait for part 2, because the part 2 is also promising. So let's see what you think with the part 1. So what we will see today, I will just introduce you again minimal APIs. I will introduce you again minimal APIs basic features, and we will have some discussion if you want, if they can replace Web APIs, and I will be available for any question, and I will be glad to answer them. So let's go. What are minimal APIs? So it's not a new feature. They have been introduced with ASP.NET Core 3 in 2019. They were named root to code and not minimal APIs. So Microsoft decided to switch name to make a more appealing name, and they call it minimal APIs. So why minimal APIs? It's simply a layer framework and more performant, takes less memory, and execute faster. Why? Because they rely on ASP.NET Core only and not on MVC framework. So it's a huge change. It's also, I would say, we'll see. It still depends on MVC framework, but in some occasion. It's also simpler to implement. It's based on delegates, C# delegates. It's simpler to unit test. It supports OpenAPI natively, and it supports also dependency injection. So it's a good summary. Now we can go a bit in depth, and I hope you will appreciate it. So when you start a project, if you start a project, there is a template. I did not take any a screen capture of creating the project from Visual Studio, but you just have to select empty API or a web API, and you will have an option, and you will unselect build with controller. And by default, if you don't use controller, it will be minimal API. So what you will have in your program.cs, it's a single file with everything you need to know, you used to know, a builder. So it uses a very basic template. You don't need any startup anymore for those who are played with ASP.NET Core 6 and 7. We call them top-level programs. So everything is in the program.cs. We create a web application, we build it, we add features. By default, OpenAPI is enabled. Then you build your project. If you need, for sure, to inject services by dependency injection or any libraries, you add them in Singleton, Transient, etc. Nothing changed there. Only thing that changed is you will implement your endpoint with some extension method like mapget. You create your route, and by default, you return your results. So we will go back on this in depth, and just to show you, you don't need many files. A single file is required, the program.cs, and at the end, app.run, and you're getting started. So when you try to execute the basic template, as I told you, it supports OpenAPI. You can run it with /swagger /index.html page, and you will find your endpoint. Okay. So this is basic template. What we will see in basic feature, it's not that basic, but this is something you use every day when you develop an API. So we will talk about routing, managing CRUD operation and HTTP statuses, parameter binding, very important, validating inputs, downloading and uploading files. It could have been part of managing CRUD operation HTTP statuses, but I decided to switch to another part and split them because it's two different topics. Streaming content, it could have been also part of downloading and uploaded files because streaming is a kind of downloading file, but it's not the same. And in course, I will go back on this as well and explain you more what is course if you don't know, and API versioning. So this is only basic features. So you can definitely build an API with these basic features. So that's why I'm not talking about filters, authentication, or global management error. It's more about advanced feature, and we will talk about this a bit later. But for the very basic, you can start a new project with. So let's start with routing. What is routing? Routing is the ability to respond to an HTTP request from any client. So as the diagram shows, there is an incoming request. The ASP.NET Core engine analysis with a pattern matching find the matching endpoint. If a route is fine, it's processed with the right endpoint, or it returns an HTTP not found. So this is the basic stuff, and it's definitely supported by Minimal API, obviously. So if we try to see some pieces of code, you see they support any kind of verb, get, post, patch, put, delete. They all have their own method: map get, map post, map patch, map put, map delete. If you have, if you want to use any other HTTP verbs, there is a method. There is no specific method, I mean, but there is a method to handle any other method, verbs, I mean. For example, if you want to use option head or trace, it will be the same method named map methods. So there is no map option, map head, map trace. I don't know why, but minimal APIs handle them. So as you can see, if you use map post, you write your route and you perform the code you want to perform. There is map get. As you can see, you can put parameters in the route. There are transform or cast in any type, for example, the GUID there. We will go back on this when it comes to talk about parameter binding. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It supports any type, complex or scalar values, primitive. And that's pretty much it for this. So I put there a red, no, not a red tag, a green tag that says, yes, it's kind of the same behavior of Web API. So if you want to use that feature, if you used to use that feature with Web API, you can definitely use it in Minimal API. So it's pretty much basic. So it's obvious, but I prefer to say, yes, it's the same behavior as Web API. That's a minimal. Next. We can manage CRUD operation and HTTP statuses. So what are CRUD operation? It's create an acronym of create, retrieve, update, delete, and can be managed with different HTTP verbs. So for those who are not familiar with, we usually use post to create any entity. So it's create from the CRUD acronym. Get, it's more for retrieving entity or collection of entities, known as retrieve from the CRUD acronym. Put, to replace an entity. And not everyone knows that, but it can create an entity if the latter doesn't exist. So it could act like a post. So if you intend to update an entity, and it doesn't exist, you have to handle it as a create operation. That's the HTTP rule. It's an HTTP rule. It's not a Microsoft convention. It's HTTP. I learned that only 1 year ago. I wasn't aware about this. Patch is for updating a part of an entity. So it's also an update, but it doesn't create the entity if it doesn't exist. That's the difference with put. And put replace entirely an entity. Patch is more about updating some fields. Commonly, we all use put, to be honest. So it's not a big deal if you use put to replace an entity, or if you want to update some properties. It's fine. It's an HTTP rule, but commonly we barely use patch. We use put, so it's fine. And delete, as you may understand, it allows to delete an entity, and it's known as the delete in the CRUD acronym. So for sure, it's also supported like web APIs, obviously. Let's take a look on HTTP statuses for if you're not familiar with, but the most common are handled with a method. I show you it's the result class. It's not the same object like action. It's not an action like ASP.NET Core MVC. It's a class that exposes. This is a result class that exposes several methods: accepted to root, bad request, byte, challenge, conflict, etc., etc. There are more verbs. So for those who are not listed, that are not listed there, you can handle them with the result.status code extension method. I will show you again. Let's go there. It's not there. It's here. So it's a static class, result.ok.accepted or .accepted, authenticated, forbidden, etc., etc. A static class. It acts like an action result in ASP.NET Core MVC. It does the same thing, but it's not the same implementation. So it's also supported if you want to migrate any Web API endpoint. Let's go next. So another example: map post, map put, map get. Created is commonly used with map post. It's 201 HTTP code. It's commonly used with map post or map put with the put word if the entity you want to replace doesn't exist. Map put can also return no content. Created when it's created, when it's updated, commonly we use no content. We can go back in the list here. You don't need to memorize them all the time, but as long as you know what is bad request, unauthorized, status code, validation problem, and created and content and OK, it's fine. The rest is less used, I would say. Conflict may be used often too. So everything is, all of this is supported by the result static class. So yes, you can handle the same HTTP statuses like the Web API. So that's a good thing, and it's also obviously the minimum that minimal APIs can handle. Next, parameter binding. So this is very important because parameter binding has evolved with ASP.NET Core 8. It wasn't as implemented as it was in Web API. What I mean here is made sure it handle the same features than Web API. It wasn't the case before ASP.NET Core 8. So those who are not familiar with parameter binding is a feature of ASP.NET Core that take the parameter of an HTTP request and convert them into a typed parameter passed to the function. So what does it support? And it wasn't the case before. It supports root parameters. It was the case before. Query string, obviously, but it wasn't well supported for body JSON only data and body as form data, key value pair that comes from HTML forms. Headers, obviously, and other. What I mean there is dependency injection, which can be implicit with some implicit type, well-known types. I mean, like HTTP requests, you don't need to register in the pipeline the object HTTP request. It's automatically filled by the framework. And there are many like this, like HTTP response, HTTP request, and many other. I forgot, but it's not a big deal. You will never use it. And obviously, explicit dependency injection. You register your own service, whatever its scope, transient, scoped, and singleton, and you can inject it into your function. I mean by the function, the delegate that is passed in parameter of the map method. So what you see there from root, it address ID, from for address, and the code return result no content, it's a delegate, a simple C# delegate. I mean delegate when I talk about functions. Okay. Next, parameter binding. Still, yes. So as I told you, minimal API are independent of ASP.NET Core MVC, but for some features, I mean parameter binding, yes. Finally, we need Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC. When I say it's not dependent to MVC, it means you can do the same from HTTP requests. So if you don't want to use parameter binding like a web API and not want to depend on Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC, you can inject HTTP request and take yourself from the body or from the query string properties data you want from the HTTP request. I should have shown you an example of this, but finally, ASP.NET Core MVC is not mandatory, but you won't be able to use from root attributes, from query, from headers, from body. You can do it yourself from the HTTP request by yourself. So it's up to you, but I prefer to use Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC for parameter binding. So it acts exactly as web APIs. Next. In parameter binding, there is one thing which is different from web API. You have to add a new library, a new namespace. You don't need a new NuGet package. It's built in ASP.NET Core. It's Microsoft ASP.NET Core.http. If you want to, unlike web APIs, if you want to pass an object in the query string, you cannot use from query. You have to use as parameters. I don't know why. There's probably a conflict with ASP.NET Core MVC. So if you want to page data like page index, page size, offset, etc., and you want to simplify it into a single object in your method, you have to use as parameter. Once again, in web API, you have to use from query. That's the only difference from complex object in array. Arrays. Web API as well supported, both supported. So if you have this feature in your web API, you can move to minimal API. So you can have a list of ID. So I miss a part of the example, but in the query, the parameter name must match the parameter name here. So if I have an array of integer named ID, you must have ID equal your data semicolon or semicolon ID equal etc. 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 It's mandatory. So if you have IDs in one match, both name in the function name and in the query string must match. Same from header. You can rename it. You can specify the name LNG, for example, for an array of string of LNG. Which are an array of string. So perfectly the same behavior, perfectly functional, no worries with arrays in headers or query string. If you have any question, I will answer them at the end. So, validation input. Ooh, you see a red flag there. So don't be scared. I will explain you. So validating your inputs will allow you to ensure that the data path in your API complies with business rule and avoid malicious data. This is very important. You must implement validation input, but it's different with minimal APIs. If you're familiar with Web API, you can use data annotation. So you annotate your model with required property attributes, minimum lengths, max lengths, etc., etc. It's not supported by minimal APIs. So we must implement an alternative to data annotation. So what to do there? If you know already, there is a library named Fluent Validation that allows you to create validation on your model you pass into your functions. Okay, that's the only alternative we have since data annotation is not supported. I have heard it might be supported by ASP.NET Core 9 or 10. Not sure, but you have an alternative. So you must download that package, Fluent Validation. You implement your validator. You simply have a method, a class, which inherits from abstract validator, which take the model as a generic type, and you perform your validation on it. Here, I decided to put the name as not empty, so as required, with an error message if the name is missing. And I'm trying to remove, not to remove, but to test if my code contains HTML tags to avoid any malicious code in the data I receive, for example. And I can customize their validation. So how does it work once you create your validator? So you just have to once add validators with an extension method provided by Fluent Validation. Add validator from assembly containing, so you don't need to register one by one your validators. You just need to put a class here as a generic which knows all your validators, and it will loop into it. How does it work? In a function which handles dependency injection by default, you just have to pass the validator on it. It will be automatically implemented. And you can perform your validation by invoking the validate function. If the payload is valid, you will have a validation result. Then you perform your code, and if it's a put, for example, you can return result no content or result validation problem. So the great thing is with Fluent Validation, you can receive a collection of error message. So you can be 1 to up to X number of error validation. You just have to cast them to a dictionary, and you pass it to the validation problem. The validation problem is a RFC convention that Microsoft handles. It returns a payload which has a title, a code which is bad request, and an array of error. And as you can see, Fluent Validation is well integrated with minimal APIs, or we could say minimal APIs works well with Fluent Validation. In the session 2, I will show you how to create a filter that doesn't need that makes you not needing any validation explicitly in your code, but in the filter, the validation can be performed automatically. So I will show you that in session 2. So we can do things better again. It's only the basic feature of validation there, but it's already good. Next, it's Minimal API obviously support downloading and uploading files. It's a must-have feature. Any API I know handle at least downloading file download. Wasn't fully supported before ASP.NET Core 8. I'm more talking about uploading files, and a good thing, and it wasn't the case before. It wasn't supported fully, and it wasn't customizable with OpenAPI before. So now it's well integrated, and I will show you some screen capture of OpenAPI. I mean Swashbuckle or Swagger, in other words. What we can do there, as I can say, you can inject a service, we'll get the file, any file. You can, I'm using a new C# syntax of tuple, so I can use tuple with a more readable way. So instead of declare tuple and my tabs by string, I can name them, and it's really more readable. So what I need to download the file, I need its file content in byte array, the MIME type, very important, just to tell the browser what you're downloading, and the file name. You can, with OpenAPI, customize your output in your Swagger. You can tell him what it produces in terms of responsive and in terms of file content. And you have to use result.file method. So it's pretty straightforward. You just have to put the byte array, the content in byte array, the MIME type, which is a string, and the file name, which is a string. And that's it. You're able to download it. How does it look in OpenAPI? So it's hard for me to enlarge the screen, so I wish you can see that. You can see the endpoint name. You can see all the code that is handled. If you want to try it out, you can select the media type. Only one thing that could be improved by Microsoft, since it returns a stream, we don't need to see in the payload, in the output payload, all the stream properties. So it's an improvement that has to be made by Microsoft. So as you can see, it's clear that you are downloading a video MP3. So it's well integrated. Let's talk about uploading files. So it wasn't the case before ASP.NET Core 7, but it has been improved again with ASP.NET Core 8. The support of eForm file. Before ASP.NET Core 7, you had to use HTTP request and grab the file content from the HTTP request object. Now, since ASP.NET Core 7, I will tell you why I'm talking about ASP.NET Core 7 and 8, because between those there are some improvement. But let's take eForm file and eForm file collection. The first one is made for uploading a single file. If you want to upload many files, you will have to use eForm file collection. It's well integrated with OpenAPI too. I will show you something after that. So what's the major improvement with ASP.NET Core 8 since eForm file collection and eForm file are supported by ASP.NET Core 7? It's the fact to be able to upload at the same time an eForm file object, a file, or several files with eForm file collection with metadata. So if you want, with an HTML form to post a form with metadata, like a subscription form, for example, and let's say a resume, it's perfectly well handled with ASP.NET Core 8, because before ASP.NET Core 8, it wasn't possible to mix from form with metadata, and a file. So this is a great improvement, and that's why I put the green flag. Yes, if you want to implement that feature and you did it, you made it with Web API, you can switch to minimal API as well. So that's a great thing. So if you are in OpenAPI, I mean Swagger, you can definitely test it. You can the browser allows you to select what type of request body you want to send, but don't worry, it's automatically set up for you. I mean by default, because you can still send JSON data, but it won't work code behind, because from form is a key value pair. If you want to use JSON, it's more from body. But by default, it's selected. If you don't select multipart or you unselect it, from form won't work, and you will have to send a JSON to make it work. So you can set up, put your data there, and select one or many files, since it's eForm file collection, and you can send everything at the same time, and it will be handled. It wasn't the case before ASP.NET Core 7. Since ASP.NET Core 7, eForm file and eForm file collection were not available in OpenAPI. Now it's the case. Streaming content, so it's the fact to download the file, but in memory in the browser. So you stream at the same time you receive your content. It's also well supported. And if you want to switch from API to minimal API for streaming content, you can. So, for example, if you want to provide any streaming service from a certain video, you can get it as a stream. I'm still using there the MIME type and the streams this time, so it's still a tuple. So I need two information there, the stream, and not an array of byte, the MIME type, and enable range processing. What is that? So by default, it's false, but you have to put true, because some browsers doesn't support fully the streaming feature. What it means that in the header, the server will send a chunk of the streaming in several packets. So if you enable it to true, you will enable the streaming chunk to be read by all the browsers. But if you are using a brand new browser such as Chrome, Edge, you don't need enable range processing. And if you add it, it won't break on new browsers. So you should set it up anytime, and it will work on any browsers. So it's only about HTTP range headers in the browser. And you use the results.stream extension method. So it's the same behavior as Web API. So you can definitely move from Web API, and it's great. I made a little demo for you. I'm not running a video, but you can see that I have been able to see a video of WRF. Great. Next. And link course. Okay, so before talking about that feature, if you are not familiar with, a course is a security feature. It's even named Same Origin Policy, SOP, that prohibits data loading from other domain names. So course feature is needed to allow or not data loading from other source. So when you, and I'm sure you did already, if you are creating a spa with Angular or React, which is hosted with the same domain name as your API, you will need to enable CORS to allow a different name to ping and get data from your API. So the configuration is exactly the same as a web API, since it's an ASP.NET Core feature. So you take it as is, and you can use it in a web API or minimal API. So what I'm showing you is pretty basic. I created two policies, which allows everything in the first one and restrict everything, not everything, but restrict to some verbs and some origins HTTP requests. So you can definitely do that in web APIs and minimal APIs. So how do I use it with minimal APIs? So you can apply a global CORS policy by using the middleware app use CORS, and you pass the name on your policy, or you don't put any names and you pass explicitly your rule in the require cause extension method. So you can do everything. That's great. It's modular and it's perfectly well handled. So CORS works seamlessly with minimal APIs. We still have another feature, is API versioning. So API versioning, it could be an advanced feature, but I would say it's a basic feature, because whatever you do, whatever your API is simple or not, you 99% of time will have to version your API, because you will handle many versions at the same time. So what is API versioning? If I'm not familiar, it's a way to handle several versions of the same API at the same time and keep unchanged all the version while you deploy a new version. API versioning can be made in 4 ways, but I'd rather suggest you to use 2 of them over the 2 others. I will explain you why. You can use it by headers. I will show you some code by root, but not with query string, because you are putting many more parameters in the array. So if you are doing paging, for example, or passing a lot of query string parameters, there is no need to have too much noise and too many parameters in the URL. So I don't find it clean, and it's easy to make any mistake. So I will not use it. I don't like it. Or content type. In the content type headers, when you request, for example, application/JSON, you can add a semicolon and the version name with its value. You can easily miss it or get wrong. So it's better to use headers with an explicit header and not the content type itself or root. Let me show you. What you have to do there is to import the ASP.NET versioning HTTP NuGet package, and you have to set it up in your program.cs. So in the services, you will invoke the add API versioning. You will set up the default version. So if you make any mistake, you will always fall back to the version 1. That's a good thing. You can fall back. Report API version or assume default versioning when unspecified are very useful when you use OpenAPI and Swagger, because Swagger will recognize it and provide you the version wide by default if you don't have any other version. And it will also provide a combo list, which will make you make version selection available. And the last option, API version reader, which is the most important property, tells ASP.NET Core the name of your version parameter. Okay, so you can name it as you want, v equal v API dash version. Usually I use v, v1, v2, v3. I will explain you why. So in the case of API version with by headers, through headers, it will be API dash version equal 1, equal 2, etc. If you use query string API version reader, it will be API dash version version equal 1, 2, 3, etc. And if you use URL segment API version reader, it won't be API dash version, it will be v. And it will be v1, v2, v3, slash v1, v2, v3, etc., etc. The group name format is mandatory for OpenAPI, else it crashes. But as you can see, it's v1, v2, or it's support as well, but it's not mandatory. v1.0, v1, 2.0, v2.1, etc., etc. So on my hand, I really prefer to pass it in the root. It's easier to read. Time for a poll. I would like to hear from you. So do you think web APIs can replace minimal API? And only considering the basic feature, would you use minimal APIs? You can answer it in the chat if you can, or comment it. Anyone want to give his opinion? Anyone? David?
Yes, we got some people putting answers in the chat, Anthony.
Yes, I see.
Okay, good.
David, yeah. Okay, good. Next. So now it's time to answer questions. So I saw that there are some questions. Oh, I see Mel. Hello, Mel. I'm also from Montreal. So you can connect with me anytime if you want. Sorry. Would you like to switch to minimal APIs? You answered it already, but what I saw here is, does it support versioning? The answer is yes. So you may have your answer, Mr. Rajan. Has the support for DI been improved? So can you precise your thought, Mr. Rajan? Because I'm not sure to understand your question or what you mean precisely. During this time, although you can put your question in the chat and I will answer them right away. So don't be shy. Anyone? Any question? Okay, Mr. Rajan. So dependency injection has two things. So implicit dependency injection with some object. As I said, you can inject automatically eLogger factory, HTTP request, HTTP response, and many other. They support any kind of well-known scope, donc scope, singleton, and transient. So if you have any more expectation, yes, you can ask me and I will answer you. But for me, it works seamlessly. For me, it's the same as Web API. So nothing changed there. Any more questions? I guess it's a no. So thank you, guys. Oh, another question. Oh, question I'm getting in. Okay, so David, is validation problem functionality part of a NuGet package or .NET? It's part of the result class, or if you're still using Web API, it's an action. So it's built in, it's not a new NuGet package. Mr. Anadan, how the .NET Core API better than Spring Boot microservices? I don't know Spring Boot microservices, but to be honest, this is the first version of ASP.NET Core where I find minimal APIs mature. It wasn't mature until .NET 8. It was good with ASP.NET Core 7, but it was really, really bad and missing main feature until ASP.NET Core 6. What Microsoft want to is to do something like Node.js. So they will keep improve them. I guess it will be perfect with ASP.NET Core 10, but I can definitely recommend you minimal APIs with ASP.NET Core 8, but not before. Any more question? Why would you use minimal API over classic Web API? Okay, Mel. To me, it's much simpler. So it's simpler to unit test. I will show you in part 2. I haven't had any more time to show it, but yes, I suggest you to come for the session 2. It's better for unit testing. It's faster because it doesn't use all the MVC stack, and you can also code your method externally in a static class. So you don't need to implement the method in the program.cs. You can use root groups, but it's an advanced feature I want to talk about in the session 2. But you can have better code, better organized. And yeah, for me, I love it. It makes API simpler and less heavier than Web API. Are there any performance comparison tests? Yes, David, I seen something like this by Microsoft when they released ASP.NET Core 7 or 8. They compared ASP.NET MVC and minimal APIs. Yes, it's 15% faster. I don't have the link in mind. If I find it, I will send it to Callan, and Callan will send it to you. Or you can reach me directly if you want. Any more questions?
Yeah, Anthony. So how can users get a hold of you? Do you have a slide that people can see your Twitter handle or email?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Sure. I will go back to the beginning.
There we go. Perfect.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub, find my blog. You can also email me if you want. I don't put it in my PowerPoint, but it's anthony.giretti@gmail.com. So anthony.giretti.com. No, sorry. It's my blog. So anthony.giretti@gmail.com. Sorry, I'm tired today. So very simple. anthony.giretti@gmail.com. Okay. So just want to introduce you if you want to learn more about my book. If you're interested, you can find it on Amazon if you want to. If you don't remember the name of my book, you can type my name and you will find it. Or you can find it on Springer Link as well. You can also type my name and find it. What I wanted to show you, and I think I forgot to mention it. If you want more code sample, so let me share my screen again. With the right window. What you found on the, I put it in the PowerPoint, but just to show you, if you don't need to necessarily my book, you can simply grab the source code on Appress, and you can grab all example. Depending on the chapter, you will find some feature or not. So you can go on appress.com, find my book. Okay. You can see the table of the content. So the first 3 chapters, you won't find any code sample. So chapter 4 is basically of REST API. Chapter 5, going further with clean REST API, and you can go on GitHub and find the code source for the chapter you want, just in case too. So it's totally free. Feel free to get it, download it, and I wish you will enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. So Anthony has graciously offered to send one lucky viewer a copy of his book that we were just looking at. So if there's any more questions, if there's any more viewers, you haven't already put a chat in the comment feed, I'm going to use that to pick a lucky winner. So I'll give you 5 seconds, and then I'll make the draw. Okay, and then as I mentioned earlier, Anthony mentioned there's a part 2. So we're going to schedule a follow-up to this talk. Part 2, we'll do it in, we're already almost end of January, so we'll do it sometime in February. I'll connect with Anthony on a good date. We'll do a live session again. So follow the meetup for details on when I'm going to post it, or just look for the YouTube live stream when that happens. But yeah, we look forward to having Anthony back. Okay, so I'll run the draw. So it's just a tool that comes with the YardStream software. And the winner is, wow, David Rodella. Look at that.
Ah, lucky you. Okay, so David.
Let's see. I should present my screen just so I could show what, share my screen. I should have done that. My bad. Entire screen. There we go. You guys should see the screen. Okay, so David, I know you. I can connect for your details. If you want to just send them directly to Anthony, he showed you his information. If you have a problem, just reach out to me, and we can connect that way. Okay.
Congratulations, David. I will send you a signed copy, just for you.
Hopefully, we can do another draw like that again on next session.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, I think that was it. If there's no other questions, thank you everyone for coming and seeing the show, and look forward to seeing you all again next time. Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, everyone.
Welcome. Bye now.